Auditrices, internautes, téléspectateurs et téléspectatrices HMI PROMZ, bien content de rentrer la cœur pour nous présenter au troisième sortie, journal 8 Info pour semaine ça. Jeudi, c'est mercredi 21 avril 2021. Et rapidement, mesdames, messieurs, mais quelques parmi les points qui pourraient le faire essentiel, journal si là. L'Église catholique à travers le pays d'Haïti, sous demande conférence épiscopale, camper toute activité dans l'école congréganisation pour exiger libération en total cette religieux bandit base gang 400 Marozoyo te kidnappé. Bandi armé dans Grand Ravine à village des dieux bloqué rentrée sud capitale là Doyo. Plusieurs employés dans cour supérieur des comptes manifesté matin devant local institution pour réclamer libération de dans collègue travail bandit kidnappé hier dans Matisse. Moun yo pas privé identifié boulé yo dans local au DVAO dans département la Tibonite, directeur institution qui était injoignable, ces populations qui étaient obligées de dégager Etienne du fait. SNCRS te volé au secours ville Semak qui sal Coupentida dans occasion célébration fête 326e l'année existence cité Nissage Sagea. Directeur institution a déclaré SNCRS vin poté collé pour permettre mon Semak passer une bonne fête. Et puis dans la page internationale, mesdames et messieurs, nous avons pour nous ministère justice américain, un jour après procès assassin George Floyd là, l'ouvrir une enquête contre une enquête police de préférence sur comportement policier dans Minneapolis. Plusieurs milliers partisans opposants politiques Poutine, Alexei Navalny, manifesté aujourd'hui dans Moscou pour demander libération Navalny. Et puis, parti politique dans l'opposition dans le pays Tchad, crié coup d'État après la mort Idriss Déby, alors que ces petits garçons là qui remplaçaient et puis mettaient sous côté Assemblée nationale Constitution. Voilà, mesdames, messieurs, c'est point sur la campulot qui prend le fait essentiel troisième numéro 8 info pour semaine ça. Restez branchés, moi-même avec toute équipe là, tourner pour les tactiques ça yo, avec divers lots, c'est après pause là.
Toujours mettez massou.
Amis, Campbell lavez-moi. Corona pas une fatalité, mais chaque petit geste compte. Prends distanciation sociale. Toujours moins de sanitaire dans la valise.
Corona toujours là. Toujours appliquer toutes règles hygiène autorité sanitaire au bail. Et un message HMI PROMZ.
Bonsoir pour nous toutes, mesdames, messieurs, mais journal là en détail. Un journal qui arrivait possible grâce à Jeffort, toute équipe sa nouvelle là, rédaction à réalisation Claude Bellevue, technicien général et caméraman Louis Dorgué Junior, micro-représentation Milka Jean-Baptiste Désir. J'en ai annoncé dans le titre, mesdames, messieurs, l'Église catholique, sous demande conférence épiscopale d'Haïti, à la conférence haïtienne religieuse entamée journée mercredi 21 avril 2021, yon arrêt sous toute activité pour exiger libération en total. Cette religieux bandit 400 Maozo te kidnappé et ça a environ 11 jours. Comme depuis incident ça, l'Église catholique rentrée dans l'événement, prière et puis ils sont les cloches toute l'église qui est en bas là institution chaque midi pour réveiller conscience dirigeants qui pas fait rien devant un phénomène kidnapping qui pas suspendre valet terrain. Démarche peuple là très souvent suivent dans cadre consigne klaxon bat ténèbres observé et chaque temps cloche l'église sonne. Jusqu'à présent, yon religieux ak payo pas libéré. Bandi 400 Marozo menacé vie si toutefois yo pas joindre rançon yo te exigé paie ça gagne je te dis l'environ 11 jours. Pour journée mercredi 21 avril là, citoyens yo dans région métropolitaine Port-au-Prince là te bat ténèbres même gens à cloche l'église catholique yo qui tape claironné en signe solidarité avec institution catholique yo. Campé toute activité l'église catholique yo tant men jodia étape et la met bout fon di ça vendredi 23 avril cap vini là alors que bandi yo nan gang 400 Marozo menacé touyer religieux yo tout autant ou du moins ça tant bête si toutefois yo pas joindre l'argent yo te exigé à direction position politique là dans ce ça dénoncer régime PHTK comme flibustier qui tombait et qui disons appareil l'État en otage sans y pas lever point de douette pour résoudre problème insécurité qui blaye en dans pays d'Haïti, j'en tout connaît ça. Bandi nan Grand Ravine ak village des Dieux tiré en pile coup d'arme ak balle journée mercredi 21 avril 2021 à cause décision gouvernement qui décidé barrer à conteneur zone yo considéré comme non droit. Bandi yo qui était en bandition by la police croix maman pour le piler quartier Grand Ravine ak village des Dieux en suivre comment ça t'est devant caméra Patrick Souvenir. Voilà, mesdames, messieurs, vous avez suivre en image qui Jean Sateye dans la cour au Port-au-Prince. Nous avons suivre exhibition et gang dans le village des Dieux avec Garavine qui baille la police défi. Plusieurs employés Cour supérieure des comptes contentieux administratifs manifesté jeudi devant localio dans cette ville-là pour protester contre kidnapping de collègues hier et puis ils ont demandé libération yo. Jean-Paul Normalis et Mimose Benoît, c'est nos deux employés la Cour des comptes yo bandit kidnappé dans zone Matissan alors que yo tous deux c'est ménager la Cour employé même gens ak reste secteur dans société a te boulé caoutchouc monter barricade frapper clôture métallique institution pour te cracher collègue militant politique opposition qui te saute fait 7 tours palais national te foué koyo tout dans mouvement employé la Cour des comptes cap mandé libération Jean-Paul Normalis ak Mimose Benoît sans condition. Parti politique Vision pour la reconstruction haïtienne VIREA mandé parents otages kidnappés pour pas aucun argent ravissé yo yon démarche selon coordonnateur général VIREA pral décourager kidnappé yo monsieur Serge Pierre-Louis qui tape rencontrer la presse jeudi a fait connaître tout secteur dans la société a concerné des phénomènes kidnapping côté pour pipiti 5 paix, 2 religieux et 3 autres monde encore en bas griffe bandit gang 400 Marozo yo. Monsieur Pierre qui produit réflexion ça pour virer fait connaître l'état doit interdit famille payer bandit pour joindre otage yo. Coordonnateur conscient bandit yo ka mauvais et puis touyer 100 fois. Et 2-3 moun après ça, il a campé parce que il a constaté industrie kidnapping par tab encore. Monsieur Serge Pierre lui, il y a l'autre bord plaidé pour gagner plus policiers en dans PNH pour couper action bandit. Délégation départementale ouest DDO mandé tout le monde qui a fait commerce moto de 3 à 4 roues obligation pour yo prendre assurance dans OAVCT avant yo livrer n'importe monde qui vend Mézissa selon responsable yo dans DDO visé pour garantir sécurité dans un département l'ouest là. Délégation dans ce sens dit la veiller sous application Mézissa qui dans l'article 16 dans le décret 31 mai 1990 là. Voilà, mesdames, messieurs, nous avons observé deuxième pause dans le journal ça, nous avons tourné pour suite information. Bienvenue, mesdames, messieurs, dans la deuxième partie dans le journal ça. Nous avons rapidement fait un coup de pied dans le département la Tibonite. Côté un gros diffé était éclaté dans la nuit mardi pour l'ouvrir journée mercredi dans une maison au DVA qui dans la Tibonite. Contacté sur dossier ça, directeur général institution Jocelyn Jean était injoignable dans le téléphone ça qui était poussé population yo dégager au Koumet Jean-Jacques pour éteindre diffé ça jusqu'à présent yo par contre origine. On suit comment ça teye devant caméra Nixon Deneus depuis département la Tibonite pour HMI PROMZ.
Allons pousser lui, allons pousser. Car on devait apprendre du feu là. Quoi ça t'en dedans, ça t'en dedans. Du feu, par contre ça fait du feu là. Du feu, on claque car on devait apprendre du feu là. Une machine derrière. Du feu, du feu. Du feu, du feu. Allons pousser lui, allons pousser. Car on devait apprendre du feu là. Quoi ça t'en dedans, ça t'en dedans. Du feu, par contre ça fait du feu là. Du feu, on claque car on devait apprendre du feu là. Une machine derrière. Du feu, du feu. Du feu, du feu.
Nous avons toujours été, mesdames, messieurs, dans la ville Saint-Marc, dans le département de la Tibonite. Il y a un CNCRS qui lancé une campagne Ramasser Fatra dans le cadre 326e anniversaire ville Saint-Marc qui apparaît pour célébrer 25 avril. Cap Venila, directeur général service national gestion à crédit solide, Jean-Rony Duvelsin, qui c'est également Moun Saint-Marc d'Ilvin pour te concours by commission communale ville là pour laver figil dans occasion fête là, pelle, camion, poubelle, bourrette déployées selon lui dans toute ville là pour résoudre problème fatra dans ville Saint-Marc. Jean-Rony Duvelsin, c'est directeur général SNCRS, l'ité devant caméra Nixon Deneus.
Il y a une question de production de déchets et nous pratiquement à quelques jours de patronat Saint-Marc, étant que fils et la Tibonite et Saint-Marc, nous prenons une initiative pour nous venir en accord, en collaboration, de concert avec Myria, pour que nous assainir la ville là. Et nous avons un gros support de MTPTC qui ben nous en pile matériel que nous-mêmes nous besoin pour nous faire ça. Et aujourd'hui, nous prenons une initiative, nous commençons avec l'opération de nettoyage de ville là. Nous avons à peu près presque 7 bascules avec 2 l'odeur, nous avons 2 compressifs, nous avons à peu près 3 tricycles. Tout ça qui vient pour faire et collecte de déchets, donc nous pratiquons disponibles. Donc, en fait, tout ça nous est capable pour que nous vivons un bon patronal et pèlerines qui sorti un peu partout dans la ville là pour nous rendre compte que les Fatra qui pratiquement symbolisent nous-mêmes comme peuple pour nous voir comment nous sommes capables d'aider pour tirer Fatra qui est dans la ville là. Mais ce qui est important, c'est que c'est suivi Fatra qui nous tire. On a réfléchi avec magistrat. Nous avons regardé pour nous comment nous avons mis un annexe de SNGRS dans la ville là pour nous renforcer les foires Myria. Et puis, nous connaissons que la loi fait de nous une institution qui est habilitée à faire de facturation qui au niveau personnel et au niveau collectif pour que nous gardions pour nous comment nous calculons Fatra à la Cameroun, pour nous faire empêcher mon jeter Fatra dans la rue, empêcher de jeter Fatra dans la rivière. Et qui va pas nos problèmes dans l'environnement, mais nous comprenons que son service, nous avons besoin de pile publicité, nous avons besoin de parler avec un pile monde là-dedans, et c'est dans ce sens nous avons et chef d'opération qui est dans le service SNGRS, qui est pour rencontrer demain si tu veux, avec une bonne partie dans la ville là, de monde qui produit Fatra, mais qui n'a pas de possibilité de film pour nous venir et SNGRS va venir avec système de facturation et son projet pilote qui est dans le ville Saint-Marc. Donc, Albert Fatra à Camounio, il a payé pour le service là, mais pas trop cher. Parce que moi-même, je constate que non plus de monde qui est Fatra à la caillou, il n'y a pas de monde qui peut venir dans la main, et il n'y a pas de Fatra à tout, il chercher de monde qui la gueule dans la rivière, qui n'est pas bon environnement, que la loi interdit. Donc, nous allons assurer nous des mesures coercitives qui prennent pour corriger la situation et pour que nous gardions comment nous avons une bonne gestion de Fatra.
Voilà, madame, monsieur, nous avons suivi directeur SNCRS là, lui-même qui t'a parlé sous intervention et a opéré dans la ville Saint-Marc à la veille et 326e existence ville Saint-Marc. On observe notre pause, mesdames, messieurs, dans le journal ça. N'a tourné pour page internationale.
Toujours mettez masque.
Zami, Kemel Saint, lavez-moi. Corona pas une fatalité, mais chaque petit geste compte. Prends distanciation sociale. Toujours moins de sanitaire dans la valise.
Corona toujours là. Toujours appliquer toutes règles hygiène autorité sanitaire au bail. Et un message HMI PROMZ.
Bienvenue, mesdames, messieurs, dans la page internationale dans le journal ça. Nous avons rappelé qu'on va suivre le 3e numéro 8 info sur HMI PROMZ. Ministère justice américain l'ouvre une enquête sur le fonctionnement la police dans l'État Minneapolis. Un jour après verdict qui reconnaît policier blanc Derek Chauvin tué 100 fois afro-américain George Floyd. Ministère justice américain besoin connaître et puis comprendre si policiers dans l'état ça des pratiques suivent un modèle inconstitutionnel dans exercice fonction selon déclaration ministre justice là Merrick Garland. Plusieurs milliers de partisans opposant Vladimir Poutine, M. Alexei Navalny, manifesté jeudi à Moscou pour demander libération opposants politiques côté étal pas bon du tout à cause d'une grève gangou li entreprendre depuis quelques jours. Tout royaume dans avenue Verskaya dans Moscou rempli avec manifestants qui demandé libération Alexei Navalny. Manifestants yo même tenté monter miraille Kremlin, policiers yo été barricadé. Russie qui gagne dictature là-dedans côté président Vladimir Poutine là, pour fougue la mail 2000 qui joue là pour juste l'année 2036 pardon. Eh bien la police arrivée arrêté en total 1200 manifestants qui tapent défendre liberté yo et puis libération Alexei Navalny qui condamné pour départ en mars pour 2 ans prison ferme pour une affaire fraude qui remontait depuis l'année 2014. Monsieur Navalny entamé une grève gangou depuis tantôt 3 semaines. Parti politique dans l'opposition qui trouvait dans le pays Tchad dénoncé un coup d'État. Les ont constaté ces petits garçons président Idriss Déby qui remplaçait pour yo c'est même pareillement dans le cadre d'une réunion jeudi entre ça yo considéré comme petit parti à gros parti dans l'opposition Tchad tant que parti opposant Saleh Gezabo mandé pour installation d'un vrai gouvernement transition en deux pays. Monsieur Kebzabo Chita Tesli coup d'état parce que petit président Idriss Déby qui prend pouvoir et dissout Assemblée nationale constitution pendant l'instaurer un couvre-feu en deux pays et puis installer un conseil transition militaire. Pays États-Unis atteint semaine objectif président Biden était fixé pour vacciner 200 millions Américains dans le cadre de 100 premiers jours sous pouvoir. Après une annonce la Maison Blanche jeudi, président Biden pral gen pour prononcer un discours pour informer le peuple américain projet yo réalisé dans le cadre de distribution vaccin yo dans le pays États-Unis. Et voilà, madame, monsieur, qui mettait un point final à la troisième sortie 8 infos pour semaine ça. Rapidement, mais quelques parmi points qui étaient faits essentiels. Journal Silla. L'Église catholique à travers le pays d'Haïti se demande conférence épiscopale campé toute activité dans l'école qu'on organise pour exiger libération sans condition. En total, 7 religieux bandits base gang 400 marozoyo te kidnappés. Bandi amé dans Grand Ravine à village des dieux bloqué rentrée sud capitale là journée jeudi à gros coup d'armes yo tap tiré tribord par bord à cause mesi gouvernement fin prend pour barrer à conteneur zone yorelé non droit. Plusieurs employés dans cour supérieure des comptes manifesté matin devant local institution pour réclamer libération de nos collègues travailleurs bandits kidnappés hier dans bloc Matissan. Moun yo pas privé identifié boulé yon local au DVA dans le département la Tibonite. Directeur institution qui était injoignable, c'était population qui était obligée de faire comme Jean-Jacques Etienne du fait. SNCRS t'est volé au secours ville Saint-Marc qui s'al coupentidan dans occasion célébration 326e année existence sans citer ni sage Sagea. Directeur institution a déclaré SNCRS vin poté collé pour permettre moun Saint-Marc passer yon bonne fête. Et puis, dans la page internationale, là, mesdames, messieurs, nous avons le ministère de Justice américain, un jour après le procès assassin George Floyd, là, l'ouvrir une enquête police sur comportement policier dans l'État Minneapolis. Plusieurs milliers de partisans opposants politiques Poutine Alexei Navalny manifesté jeudi dans Moscou pour exiger libération. Et puis, parti politique dans opposition dans le pays de Tchad crié coup d'État après la mort Idriss Déby, alors que c'est petit garçon qui remplaçait et puis mettait sous côté Assemblée nationale Constitution. N'a pas remercié pour fidélité aux patients sous écoute ou attention à troisième numéro 8 info pour semaine ça, mesdames, messieurs. Journal ça a été arrivé possible grâce à que j'ai fait toute équipe salle nouvelle là, rédaction et réalisation Claude Bellevue, technicien général et caméraman Louis Dorgué Junior, micro-présentation, c'est moi-même serviteur Milka Jean-Baptiste Désir. N'a pas invité tout de suite après journal là pour capable suivre émission Transaction. Bonne soirée et bonne écoute. À la prochaine.
Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Transactions. My name is Aminata Botas of Botas Financial Services, where we try to meet your financial needs. This week's episode focuses on first-time home buying and refinancing. And my special guest this week is Peter Costa of oh my goodness, I forgot your Easy Apps Mortgage. I apologize.
That's all right. I know.
So Peter, why don't you just introduce yourself to the audience and just tell us a little bit about your career path.
Oh, yeah. Nice to be here. Yeah. Well, I started off in real estate. I was a real estate broker for about 24 years. And about 5 or 6 years after that, a lot of my buyers were asking me the same questions they would ask the mortgage broker. Well, I like this house. How much is it going to cost me? That's really what it comes down to is you can like a house, but what are the real numbers? And so when a lot of clients would ask me that, I said, well, I really need to be the financial expert in the transaction because without the financing, no matter which house you like, you're not going to be able to get into it. So about 5 or 6 years after I got into the real estate, I started a mortgage company, and we've been going solid ever since. And it's nothing like having the transaction knowing from start to finish that it's going to be completed, and we have everything done up front. That's really the key, because you be in your car all day long driving, looking at houses, and there's nothing worse than a buyer looking at the house, putting up an offer on it, and then finding out, am I really going to get approved for this house? Can I actually close on it? So having so many unknowns, we started the mortgage company, and we we took off from that, and we try to get that done first before they even get in the car. And that's really what we really aim to do.
So it was really, I guess, being better equipped to help your customers, your clients. Is that why you decided to get into the mortgage brokerage business?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, definitely, yeah.
So where's your office located?
Well, we're local. We're in Stoughton, so we're right in Stoughton Center on Central Street in Stoughton, right behind the Walgreens.
Okay.
And
I know
we
that.
own that building there. It's an office building, and we've been there since I've actually 20 years.
Oh, that's a
About
long
that.
time.
Yeah.
So what would you say about your past experience as a realtor, and then after you transitioned over to a mortgage broker? What experiences have you had as a real estate agent, would you say helped you to serve your clients better?
Well, yeah, because I'm seeing my eyes are on their lens, so I'm seeing what they're going through and what all the emotions go when you're looking at a house and when you're trying to buy a house. There's a lot of emotions that are involved on the purchase side as a realtor. So I have to give the realtors credit when they're going out showing properties. They're marriage counselors, they're family counselors,
Yeah.
what do the kids want? All these things they have to consider when they go in. And the buyers are in the same boat. They can't sleep at night because I put an offer in and the seller has 24 hours to respond to this offer. And so being in their shoes and understanding how important the financing part is, that's really why we struggle so much to make sure that everything's done up front. And we always aim for that. We always underwrite the file and make sure that it's solid before they even get into the purchase, especially if they're putting a deposit down. They're putting a lot of money down, $1,000 at offer. Then they're going to put $10,000, $20,000 when they sign the purchase and sale. That's a lot of money at stake.
It is.
And when I would be going in blind and worrying about, okay, what about the financing? Is it solid? Because you usually don't hear from the mortgage broker. Nobody wants to talk to the mortgage broker. It's not glamorous. It's,
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like accounting. It's a little boring, but everyone needs it, right?
Yes, yeah. So you don't hear from them until, when's the commitment letter? Am I going to close on time? Then you finally hear from the mortgage broker. And then they could say, oh, I had some issues, or yes, everything's good. So having that unknown really got me into the mortgage side of things and really pushed me to that level where I could really protect my buyers. I'm all about protecting them, making sure they're really on the right ground and right footing.
So one thing you said that I found pretty interesting is the psychology of helping your buyers, especially like if you have a husband and wife and they have different tastes. One might be more traditional and the other one might be more contemporary, right? And I'm addicted to HGTV, and but I had to stop myself a few years ago because I think it was a Saturday where I literally stayed in bed looking at other people getting their projects done, and I didn't get anything done at all. So that's when I realized, okay, you have a problem. So I had to wean myself off of it. So it's pretty interesting, that you mentioned that, because I've seen that a lot where you have couples and, the wife wants one style, the husband wants a different style, but it takes a special skill, I think, as a realtor to kind of hone it in and get a house that can fit both parties. And I think having that skill, like you mentioned, from being a realtor, you're thinking more about the psychology of, this is pretty stressful for the buyer, it's pretty stressful for the seller. So that's a good point. And I know you also have first-time home buying courses. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that?
Yes, we do that. We've been doing that for years on a monthly basis. We have a sign-up sheet on our website, and we do the first-time home buyers. But what we do differently than what you see a lot of these courses are, a lot of these courses are just trying to get buyer leads and say, oh, you're a buyer, you're looking to do a first time. And they tell you, yeah, you're going to have to sign a contract, you're going to do a purchase and sale, you're going to do a home inspection. Well, that's important to know. But what we do is we explain how do you get to that point. So our home buyers courses are more about how is the financing going to work. What do you need to do to be financeable to the lender and make sure that you are shown at the best light? What does your credit score need to be? All the important things. So a lot of these other home buyer classes, they're all talking about you're already approved at that point. They want to just assume that you're going to be going out and this is what you need to do a home inspection, do the purchase and sale, get an attorney. That's all knowledgeable information. We also explain some of that. But what we really get down to is what is the lender looking at? So it's more of you need to have a good credit score. You have to have all your debt paid on time. What does your bank statements look like? Lenders will look 2 months back on all the bank statements. So we want them to be aware of that. Do you have enough reserves in your account? Do you have enough for the down payment? Do you have any large deposits? We see that all the time. Large cash deposits. Well, put in a large deposit, and then it's too late if the lender already saw that, and they're going to say, why did $5,000 go into your bank account? Well, we can't count that towards your down payment now.
So why is that an issue?
Because any large deposits over 1% of your income, the lender looks at it and says, where did this money come from? I can't source it anywhere. So they say, did the seller give you $5,000? You put it in your bank account in cash, and now you're buying that house because the seller could have eventually funneled the money towards you. So that's a way that the lenders look at it and say, how do I know that's not really what's happening? Is the seller paying you to buy this house from them? So large deposits are the number one thing that you really have to be cautious on, because not only that, they look at the whole scheme of it and say, where's all this money coming from? Is it from other work that you might have had? And let's say you're self-employed and you put large deposits in there. Well, they're going to say, oh, now you're self-employed. Well, what kind of a job is this? Is it stable? Is that going to fold, and then all of a sudden you have a mortgage now and you can't pay the mortgage? So everything's changed in the last 10 years with Dodd-Frank and all these new regulations that are in place. The key thing with Dodd-Frank when that was enacted was the ability to repay. The lender has to, above anything else, has to make sure that the borrower, or the buyer in this case, has the ability to repay this mortgage. And once that's approved, then they can go ahead and verify your bank statements look okay, your pay stubs look accurate, your credit card limits, your credit scores, all these things. When they look at it all as one package, then they approve your loan. And that's really what the underwriting process is. We look at all that, we make sure that the lender is going to take the package and they understand exactly where you stand. And everybody's unique. Everybody has different, cases. So we try to look at that up front before you even get in the car and start looking at houses.
Okay, so I think we'll go into a little bit more detail about that later on. But you mentioned earlier that, usually when you go to a first-time home buyers class, they tell you, well, you have to sign a contract. So what contract specifically are you referring to? Is it a contract with a realtor, or is it a contract with the company that provided the training?
Usually the realtor. So a lot of the home buyer seminars, they'll talk about what is the realtor's role in the transaction. And a lot of buyer's agents will make their buyers sign a contract saying you're exclusively working with me. And same way a seller does it. So sellers say to a real estate agent, I'm exclusively going to give you my listing, and I want you to sell my house and you to market my house and send it out to all the buyers. So the buyers also have that same type of contract where they say, I'm going to work with this particular agent, and that agent's going to find me the house that I'm looking for. Then you got to be careful because the contracts are all different. Some agents make you sign a contract. Other agents don't. When you do sign a contract, it could have a clause in there saying you're going to pay a commission regardless of what the seller pays. And so then you're on the hook for any type of commission that would be paid to your buyer's agent. So you always have to look at who's working for me as a buyer. Is it my buyer's agent, or is it the seller? And is there a fee involved? Because just like anything else, if you sign a contract, you have to be aware of what you're signing and what you're obligated to pay for. Just like a mortgage, you're going to sign your mortgage, a 30-year mortgage, 15, 20-year mortgage. You're signing a promissory note, which is a contract that says,
Yeah.
I promise to pay you back this money. So, in lieu of that, I'm going to give you a mortgage saying you have a right to a claim to my property until it's paid off.
That's true, because it is the bank's property. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to get back to a point that you just brought up where you said that, you know, some realtors would force you to sign a contract. How does that happen? Like, no one can force me to do anything, to sign anything I don't want to sign.
Yes, yeah.
So is it, would you say it's more the naivete of newer buyers, and they think that because I had a conversation with this realtor and because this realtor said that I need to sign this contract, do you think that's why it happens based on your experience, or is it something
It's
else?
all about that. It's all about the pressure on it. And the reality is, you do not have to sign any contract. As a buyer, you do not. And in my real estate practice, I require my agents not to have the buyer sign a contract. Because the way I look at it is, put your money where your mouth is. You're going to go out and spend a lot of time with this buyer, and you're going to be a lot invested with them, and you want to see them to the finish line. It's only natural. But you don't need a contract to say, hey, listen, I'm going to get paid no matter what, so I'm going to charge you a commission. And then let's say the seller, because every seller is different, may pay a different type of commission scale. And so that buyer may say, well, I don't want 2%, I want 2.5% or 3%. And so they could force the buyer to say, hey, you need to sign this contract if I'm going to take you out. The reality is, the information world. When I first started, we had books. The real estate book would come out once a month, and we would go through it and say, where are you looking for houses? That's, you know.
Wow, that seems so archaic.
It is, yeah, and I still keep that book in my office just to
How big is it? Was it like the old, remember the old, the phone books?
Yes.
The yellow pages, the white pages, yeah.
A big phone book in every county.
Oh, jeez.
And so at those days, it was important to have the realtor there. But now where the information's everywhere, you really don't want to pin yourself down and sign a contract with any agent unless you are prepared to follow through with it. That's why, you know, I got into the mortgage business. It was kind of the same thing. I want to make sure my people are protected, and I don't want to see them get harmed in any way and say, oh, I didn't realize I was under pressure. I signed a contract. Now I owe them a 2% commission because the seller's only going to pay 1%. So
that 2% would be out of pocket from the buyer?
Correct. It would be out of pocket.
So outside of the mortgage, it's like you've got to come up with that. That could be expensive.
It could be very expensive,
yeah.
And we've seen that from time and time again. And it's an unnecessary part of the game where you get that pressure from the realtor. But my philosophy always, if you get that kind of pressure, run. That means there's something wrong.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your classes. How could someone sign up for a first-time home buyers class? Would you mind just like sharing with us your website? Like how would they go about? Would they have to call?
Yeah, they can go right to the website, www.easyappsmortgage.com, and I'll share that with you as well. And then we have one of the pages for the seminars, and then they can just sign up right from there. And we have them once a month. And so what we'll do is we'll dedicate a special seminar just for your viewers to get, and you can set up a time for that as well, and I'll post that for them.
Great.
And then I'll even put it for your viewers, and we can do a private one just with that.
That's amazing. So for everyone who's listening, if you're interested in signing up for a first-time home buyers class, please go on Peter's website and mention the show Transactions. And you could also either send an email to me at mybfservices@gmail.com. You can also, you can also reach out to the station here, and at that point we can determine what would be a good time, or maybe a couple times for us to have this class. So please definitely sign up. You've heard some really, sage points that Peter brought up about having the knowledge and not, being not having someone run all over you and telling you that you have to sign a contract when you actually don't have to sign it. So that's pretty important news. Another thing I think, if you wouldn't mind sharing with the viewers, is you know, if this is someone's first rodeo, or let's say if you bought a house years ago and it was the first time, then you're thinking about buying another house now. And a lot of times the terminology that's used in the refinance or the buying world, to you it's second nature, but to the rest of us, lay people, it might not be. So would you mind just going over some of the major terms and what it means, and so that way we can feel a little bit more comfortable when having a discussion with a bank versus a broker, and then we could go a little bit more about the differences between banks and brokers later.
Yes. It's just like any other industry, there's always terms that we all use. And if I were to call up one of my lenders and I said, I have a buyer, her name is Ame, and this is what she's looking to do. They want basically 4 or 5 things. They want to know what your income is. So, and when your income and when we pull your credit and what your debt is one of the key factors. So, and we call that the debt to income ratios. So we have your debt and we have your income. So we know what those 2 things are. You've got auto loans, you've got credit cards, and then you have X amount of dollars coming in every month. So your DTI is one of the key things to get you approved, your debt to income ratio. And so when we add those 2 up, we tell the lender, okay, I have a DTI of, let's say, 47%. And that means your income, but your debt is not going to exceed 47% of your income. So the DTI is one of the most important things. And then you have your FICO score. And your FICO score is the middle of the 3 credit scores that you get. You have Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. So you have these 3 credit scores. We take the middle of the 3 scores. And that would be your FICO score.
Got it.
And then you have your loan to value. We call that the LTV. So your loan to value is how much are you going to put up and how much is the lender going to put up. In the lender's eyes, all they care about is the lender. So are you putting 3% down, 5% down? That's your loan to value. And so if I were to say to the lender, okay, I have a client, her name is Ame, and her DTI is 47, her FICO score is 720, and the LTV is 95. With those 3 things, the lender could give me a quote right over there and say, okay, this is what I'll give them for an interest rate. And we're doing a 30-year fix or a 15-year fix, whichever the loan terms would be. But with those 3 things, they know right off the bat what we can do. And so that's really the most important thing when you're going out.
So I guess those are, because I was going to ask you, what are the qualifications a client should have to refinance? So just really those 3 items.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
You want to have a good credit score, and good credit score really means 680 and higher. You're going to get the most favorable terms. Anything higher than 720, 740, you're going to get the lowest possible interest rates. But the bottom line is, in order to get you approved, you want to have a 680 credit score. You want to have a loan to value. If it's a refinance, we want to see 80%. So the lender says, okay, I'm going to finance and give you 80% of what the house is worth. And so we have an appraisal done, and the appraisal says the house is worth $500,000. Well, the lender will say, well, I'll give you up to 80% loan to value at the most favorable terms. You hear all the time on the radio teaser rates. You hear, the rates are 1.99.
Yeah.
Well, what does that really mean? Well, what is the loan to value? What's the DTI? What does the FICO score have to be to get that interest rate? So that's really key. You get those, not a bait and switch type of thing, but it's close to it. They're just giving you the teasers and say, oh, well, that's a 10-year adjustable mortgage or a 15-year. You don't know until you actually go through it and see what you're approved.
So would you also say that the teaser rates are rates based on if you had excellent credit as opposed to like a 680 versus, 800 credit score?
Yeah, and always look at that fine print. Whenever you get anything, whether it's on the radio or even on paper, they have to, by law, put on in the fine print. The minute they tell you an interest rate, they have to tell you, how do they base that interest rate on? What's the loan to value? And they'll put that right in there to confuse everybody. LTV, 70% or 50%, FICO score 820 or higher, and you don't even see
like
it
how many
so
people
small.
would have that. And it's funny, so like that you mentioned that, because like I don't mind watching commercials, right? But my boyfriend, he hates commercials, so he's always like flipping back and forth between commercials. And I always pay attention to the fine print, whether it's a political ad or any ad that has fine print at the bottom. I think, okay, you're not being 100% honest, right? There's some caveats in here, and who has the time to read all of those lines in like less than 2 seconds?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's pretty interesting. Another question that I wanted to ask you was, what is the expected lag time for if someone wanted to refinance? Like, what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? And can you give us an example of the best case and then the worst case scenario?
Oh, yeah.
And then why? Why was the worst case scenario so bad?
Yeah, well, you always got to plan ahead, and every lender is different on how they look at a file. But a best case scenario, and this is best based on like a lender having very good turn times, we can get a loan closed in 12 days. It's incredible. Some of our mortgage lenders that will close the loans that quickly. And then you have other loans that could take 2 or 3 months, honestly. There could be a loan that could be 3 months long because things come up. And like the best case scenario, you have someone that has all the income and everything in line. They don't have a lot of other properties that we have to worry about verifying. And we get what's called in this industry an appraisal waiver. So if we get an appraisal waiver, then you're not spending 15 days waiting for an appraiser to come out and verify how much the house is worth. You can literally get it done very quickly. And we're seeing a lot more of those lately. With so much technology out there, the lenders and ourselves, we order what's called a automated valuation model. AVM is what we call it. We run it through, and if we say, okay, your house is worth X amount of dollars and you're wanting to borrow maybe 70% of that LTV where that comes into play, the lender will say, I'm comfortable realizing that this value is pretty accurate. We don't need to send an appraisal out there. So they can get it done even quicker.
How often do you see that?
We've been getting a lot more of those lately. I would say about 5% of our loans that are coming through the door on refinances have an appraisal waiver.
Do you think that's because of COVID, or is it just that the industry is trending towards not having a lot of appraisals?
They're trending that way because it costs a lot of money. Even the lenders, it costs us a lot of money to get the appraisals done, to verify it. So if they can cut some of that cost away in time is money in this market. It's so volatile. I'll come in the office on a Monday and the rates are at X, and then all of a sudden 2 hours later it's higher, and then it goes back down again. So everything is so volatile right now. If they could speed up the process and not send an appraisal out there, they will. Because the reality is, if you're doing what we also call a rate and term refinance, where you're not pulling money out of the house, all you want to do is lower your interest rate, or even on the other thing is lower your how many years you have left on the mortgage. If you're doing those two things, most of the time you will get an appraisal waiver because they know you have a lot at stake.
Yeah.
It's all about, in the mortgage industry, leverage. The lender says, what's the leverage? If I'm going to put up a lot of risk, then I'm going to charge you a higher rate, and then I'm going to do appraisals, I'm going to do all these things in the background. But if it's not, and you're borrowing 50% of what they have for the AVM, they'll say, okay, even if it's not 50%, it's still comfortable enough that we can finance it and not run into any problems.
So, and you also mentioned that if a seller, or not necessarily a seller, but if someone who wants to refinance has multiple properties, sometimes that could be, I got it as a negative. Did I get that right? And if so, why?
Not so much a negative, but it's just more work and more time consuming. So what you have to look at is, once you get into anything, a real estate transaction or just a refinance transaction, the lender, all eyes are on you. The lender looks at everything from that point on. So the minute I pull a credit score, the minute I show them bank statements, all eyes are on it from that point on. if you have multiple properties, they want to make sure, okay, you have 3 other properties. Are all those mortgages paid on time? And you want to have a 12-month rating to show, okay, I've been paying all my mortgages on time. And so they look at that and make sure of it. So the lender just has more work involved and more legwork to verify that everything is all up to date. Because a lot of borrowers will think, well, why are you asking me? I'm trying to do this house, but you're asking me about my other house. Well, everything's relevant. The ability to repay. Can you pay that mortgage and this mortgage? So yes, we want to know about everything. And that comes up a lot. The lenders look at everything, and they find out about everything. They're doing their backgrounds. So let's say, and we had this happen plenty of times, where they're buying a house or refinancing the house, and they tell us, yep, this is the only house I have. And then we do the backgrounds, and the lender comes back to me and says, do you realize they own a piece of land in Florida? Oh, they do? Well, now, okay. And they say, I thought it was insignificant, it's just land. Well, you pay taxes on that land. Do you have to pay insurance on it? So now we have to hit you with that DTI, that debt to income ratio. You might have a $200 tax bill for a land in Florida. We have to hit you with that. We have to make sure you can still qualify for this mortgage based on all your debt. And they look at everything, they find everything. So my key thing as a mortgage broker is to make sure I find out about everything up front. You want to tell me all the key factors so we can plan ahead and make sure it goes nice and smoothly. That's usually what will take 2 or 3 months, because some things like that might come up. And it's not a big deal, it can be fixed, but we have to recalculate everything and make sure we verified everything. And that's where it could take the longer span of things.
So if you have multiple properties, I know I keep harping on this, right? But if you have multiple properties and they're investment properties, and you pay your mortgage on time, how is that looked upon?
Well, you look strong to the lender's point of view, because they say, well, this is a seasoned investor. They know what they're doing. They have a lot of properties. The only thing they'll do is they'll say, okay, out of all those 5 properties, just let me know what the payment history is on all of those.
Got it.
And what is the, give me mortgage statements for all those properties, so I can hit you with all that debt and that income. As you know, on tax purposes, that's where it hits you where, what does your rental income add up to versus what is your mortgages? And your DTI is still in line at that point?
Yeah.
A lot of times it's not, and that could be.
Okay. So you also, we talked about appraisals and how before it was the norm to always, well, not always, but to mostly have appraisals, and now it's changing. What would you say consumers need to understand about appraisals? Because I had a friend who recently had an appraisal, and she said, you know, what are they looking for? So can you just tell us what they look for and what consumers can do to get a more positive appraisal as opposed to negative appraisal?
Oh, yeah. Main thing is making sure the condition is in good enough shape that there won't be any questionable things to repair. So let's say you have chip and paint everywhere on the exterior of the house. Well, the lender's going to look at that and say, well, if I ever have to foreclose on this house and there's chip and paint now, how bad is it going to be when I get a hold of the property? So they'll say some minor repairs need to be done. So in the appraisal report, they always give you a rating how well the property is maintained. And they look at that rating to make sure that it's at least at minimal level. So it's habitable and it's safety. Those are the key things. So if you have a front stairs that's fallen, safety issue, the lender will tell you to fix that. If you have a hand railing that's missing, the lender may tell you, well, you need to fix that, because they look at all the worst case scenarios. What if something happens and somebody falls? Well, they could sue you, and now the lender is going to have, a risk involved that they could take the property away. All these little things, they look at that. That's really safety issues is the key thing. If the house is clean, ready to go, what they're going to do is just go in there and look at the layout and make sure that it's standard to the market area, and you don't have, a bedroom right in the middle of the living room. So they really just sketch out the property to see how it looks, take a few pictures, and then they just do their report. But safety is the number one thing. You want to make sure.
What about the types of materials that you use to, I guess if you make repairs or if you make any improvements, does that matter or does it not matter?
It does up to a small extent though. So on the real estate side, I used to tell that to my buyers all the time. Don't over improve a property because you can get mixed up in that. You're so excited, it's your first house, you're putting all these improvements in it.
Yeah.
I'm doing granite everywhere, I'm doing 3 extra bathrooms. You don't want to over improve a property because then the appraiser will come in and say, yeah, this is all nice. It will help you sell the property.
Yeah.
But it's not going to give you much value. Adding another bathroom will, because now it's a 2-bathroom instead of a 1-bathroom. So you'll get value from things like that, adding an addition. But when you're just renovating and updating the kitchen and making it more modern or updating the bathroom, that's all good. But the appraiser's going to say, it'll make a note saying that you've done those repairs since you own the property, but it's not going to really change much of the value. Cosmetic repairs are more for when you go to sell, you're going to sell it faster than the house next door because it's more modern. So if time is on your side and you say, I want it sold in 3 days, then you want all the amenities that you can possibly have. But if it's for the value of the house, it's only going to be worth as much as it can be worth. People are getting caught up these days where they're overbidding so much for these properties, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 over asking, and then the appraiser comes in and they say it's not worth that much money, and they bring them back to reality and say this is what it's worth. Because I don't care if there's granite, I don't care if there's gold all around the house. If it's still a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, that's what you're.
It's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath.
It's still a 3-bedroom,
wow.
1-bath.
So that's like another sort of divide that I personally have, because I do fall guilty of that. Sometimes I do over improve, whereas it's good to hear it that if you're adding like another extension or bathroom, that makes sense, but don't spend too much.
Don't, definitely. Okay. Especially with the investment properties, you're never getting that money back.
Okay.
So investment properties are a whole different ballgame. You want to do good repairs because you want to have happy tenants.
Yeah.
But when it comes time to sell it, you're getting a different type of investor going in there. They're just looking at the numbers saying, how much is this going to cash flow is going to give me? And that's one of the other seminars we have for investors.
Yeah.
Where you really take the emotion out of it, and it's a matter of, what is this property going to bring me every month? If I'm going to shell out 20 or 30% down on this house, then I want to have the return. And that's a whole different ballgame. So you want to do improvements because you're living in the house, and it's a quality of life for yourself.
Yeah.
But you don't want to over-improve it where when it comes time to sell it, you're going to say, well, I spent $100,000 on repairs, but I only got $80,000 more.
Yeah, so then you lost 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
but
a good
the only
point.
difference on that is you enjoyed that $20,000 while you're living in there. That's how you got to look at it.
Okay. So what qualifications do you prefer in appraisers and why?
Appraisers are tough, yeah. And they made it even tougher these days where we have to go to an outside company first. We call that appraisal management company, AMC. So we go to an appraisal management company and we say that I want an appraisal done. And there's so many different appraisal management companies competing for our business. They all say, well, we're going to give you the best service. We're going to be quick. We're going to assign an appraiser to this right away. And so they try to hone in on those so we can go to that particular appraisal. I could order an appraisal with one person and they say, I won't be out there until 3 weeks from now. But then if we call another appraisal company and say, can you find an appraiser that can come out next week? You know they will. And we tell them, well, we have another appraisal company, but they're saying it's going to take 3 weeks. Can you do it sooner? And so competition, it's a good thing. We really need to have that competition. And so the appraisal management companies, they step in and they try to expedite that and make sure that the reports are accurate. So when the lender looks at it, they're not asking for changes. It's done quality and as quickly as we can. We recently, just a matter of a couple weeks ago, one of our lenders that we do a lot of business with, they came out and they said, listen, our appraisal management companies guarantee you, us as a broker, that you'll have that report back in your hands in 10 days. And if we don't give you that report in 10 days, we're going to refund you half the price of that appraisal. So everybody's being aggressive now.
Yeah.
And so that's just the good thing about competition. So if you said, I need this done right away, time is of the essence, and I find, okay, I have an appraisal, well, I know this lender and this appraisal management company, they'll get it out there and they'll get it back within 10 days. And time is money, especially with the rates and the way things are going.
I think especially since they're putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
That I can appreciate.
Yeah, and they've already owned up to that. There's going to be some circumstances that they can't get out there right away, but at least if you know, well, that saved me another $300 or $400 off the price of the refinance, because instead of $600, now it's $300 because they reimbursed me. That extra time is well spent.
Yeah, and it's also saving on the closing costs as well too.
Yes.
So can you? I know we spoke about waivers earlier, but if you could just give a little bit more detail of what's driving the waivers for appraisals.
Yeah, it's all about the
based
information.
on your experience.
So the lenders have all this information at their fingertips now that they can do a quick report and say, yes, the average sales price on this particular house would be this amount. Because they can do that now virtually, they're more comfortable saying, okay, I don't need to have an appraiser go out there and physically look at the house and verify the same thing. So, and if you're not pulling money out of the house, you're not doing anything crazy, you're just trying to improve your current situation, the lender knows, well, you've been there already for 5-10 years and you already paid down your mortgage. They're willing to take that extra risk and say, well, let's just get an evaluation done. And a lot of those reports that come in are realtors. On the real estate side, I used to get those requests all the time. They're called BPOs, Broker Opinion of Value.
Okay.
And they would say, as a broker, instead of paying an appraiser to go out there, just do a drive-by and make sure that house is what we think it's worth, and give me your own report. And that's what they're doing, a lot of those now. With COVID involved, because if they can mitigate the risk on having someone go in the house, they'll try to do that. And so it is driving the waivers much more now than we've ever seen.
So do you think, in your opinion, right, because I know a lot of inspections hasn't happened over the past year and a half because of COVID, and a lot of folks are now working from home as opposed to working in the office, and my personal feeling is that, once you let the genie out the bottle, then it's hard to go back to working in the office. And, just to give you an example, one of my tenants has a daughter, she's a teenager, and so I went to the house to do a repair the other day, and so she's in bed, and she's taken a class, and then she had a break for like maybe an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, because she had a lunch break, and then her class was not until maybe another hour after that. And I said to her, I said, how are you going to transition from this to going back to school? Isn't that going to be hard? Like, how do you do that? Because before she got up at 5 a.m. and now she's in bed all day, right? And then she's there with her mom. Like, what do you think is going to happen with these waivers after COVID? Do you really feel that a lot of these inspectors will, want to come into someone's home or not? Like, what's your feeling?
Yeah, I do see a trend that when things get back to normal, the lenders will ease back on that and not take as much risk, and then make the appraisals go back out there. So I do see that eventually would slow down because they are going to be concerned about
really what's going on in the houses.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and we'll be right back.
Toujours mettez massou.
Zanmen, kembel san, lave moun.
Corona pas une fatalité, mais chaque petit geste compte. Prends distanciation sociale. Toujours moins de sanitaire généralisé.
Corona toujours là. Toujours appliquer toutes règles hygiène autorité sanitaire au bail. Et un message HMI PROMZ.
Welcome back, everyone. I am speaking with my special guest this week, Peter Costa of Easy Apps Mortgage. And I don't know how many of you realize that the last Super Bowl, Peter had a Super Bowl commercial, and the commercial just, it didn't really go into a lot of details or in depth, but it basically was the difference between using a mortgage broker as opposed to going to, say, Bank of America or Citizens Bank. So, Peter, would you mind explaining to us the prefaces of your commercial and what the benefits are?
Oh, yeah. Then we started off the commercial by saying, brokers are better. We are better. Brokers are better. We have much more flexibility, and we have much more options. I get my lenders. Let me give you the definition of a broker, first of all. Just like, very similar, really the same thing as a real estate broker. As a broker, we broker a transaction. So a broker is standing here and you have a buyer, or a borrower in this case. We work for the borrower and we say to the lender, here's our money, we have everything all set up for her, we have a nice clean package for her, and the lender says, okay to the broker, I'm going to fund this loan. That's the difference between a broker than going directly to a lender. Like, let's say you walk into Bank of America or Citizens, and you go to your local bank every week to make your deposits, and the teller behind there always says, are you looking to refinance? Are you looking for a home equity line? All these things. Well, as a broker, we shop your package around to get you the best interest rate, the best terms, but most importantly is making sure your package is accurate and it's what the lender wants to see before they even invest their time and money in it. So the lender takes all that away, because as a broker we just give them a nice clean package. So all the work is done for them. All they got to do is verify what we already told them and what we already gave them. And that's a key thing. Where a broker, you can really, it's your personal shopper. We're going to go to one lender and say, what are you going to give her for a rate? The other lender is going to say, I'm going to give you this rate. Everyone's competing for your business. And that's how we can create an urgency with the lenders and say, all right, who's going to give her the best rate? And here's all the terms. Here's the LTV, here's the FICO score, and what are you going to offer her versus somebody else? In the retail side of things, you really can't do that. You walk into Bank of America, they got one package and one package only. So they're going to say, I don't care who you are, this is what we offer. And, it works all the time, but when you have particular cases where you have cash deposits, you have all these things that may factor into the purchase of the property or the refinance of the property. On the retail side of things, when you go into your local bank, they don't know any of that. They just take your paperwork and pass it along. So that's the big difference between a broker. We're actually processing the file. We're telling you up front, this is a red flag, this is what we need to fix, before I even get it to the lender.
Oh, that's an advantage. Because I know, and not to cut you off, because you can continue, but I know when you go into the bank, you typically see the chart, and you know what the rate is. For savings, it's garbage, right? And then you see all of the different rates. So basically what you're saying is that for a mortgage broker, you're basically, you have a wider pool that you can choose from.
Yes.
Okay.
And at any time, we get calls, on a weekly basis from lenders saying, sign on with me, give me business, give me business. We have, on a good day, 30, 40 different lenders that we can shop your loan to. And every lender has different criteria that they look for, and every lender is being more and more competitive. And so that's the major advantage. We pull your credit once, you're not going to have 30 different lenders pulling your credit. They take my credit report, it's frozen in time, so when you come to me and you say, this is what my credit score is, at that point, all my lenders will accept that report.
Got it.
So when you go into the retail side, everybody in the world is pulling your credit, and then by the time you get to the fifth person and you're trying to shop this loan, and they're going to say, well, now your credit score is 10 points below what you first started off at, and they're going to offer you a lower rate anyway because of the rate of the score is so low. So you don't want to fall into that trap. That's really costing you a lot of money because, remember, it's a 30-year mortgage. Over the life of the loan, that 0.25% interest rate could mean $30,000 more that you're paying on this property.
And every penny counts.
It does, yeah.
And I know you also mentioned to me previously that you do your due diligence up front, or you prefer to do your due diligence up front. What does that mean and why? It sounds fine, but if you can just explain to everyone.
Yes, and not all mortgage brokers do that, but we do in our office. I make it a standard that I underwrite your file from day one and get you fully underwritten. I go through every key details, credit, bank statements, W-2s, all these things, and actually underwrite your file. So when I give it to the underwriter, when I choose which lender we're going with, we know what they're going to see, and we know what we want them to see, most importantly. So we underwrite the file first, then we let you get in the car and start looking when it comes to buying or when it comes to refinancing. Before you go crazy, we'll tell you right up front, this is what we're going to have a problem with. There are a lot of cases, one lender might take something, another lender won't. So let's say you have a 670 score. Well, one lender will take 670, but other lenders won't. You go to Bank of America and they tell you, no, my minimum score is 680, so you're out of luck. So you've got to have options, especially in the financial world. You need to have options. And my biggest thing is education. I want to educate you so you know you're making a sound decision. Because this is a 30-year mortgage, 20-year mortgage, 15-year, whatever type of mortgage you are, it's still money that you want to be fully educated with. You can't get that on the retail side. They just take your stuff and pass it along.
Pass it to the next department, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And by the time they do that, it's too late. If you're a buyer looking at a house and you put a deposit down, and you got the realtor calling you every day, hounding, and you have the purchase and sale sign, and you have 20 grand, 30 grand on the line, and then the retail side of Bank of America or Citizens, or shouldn't even be naming names, but any retail channel, by the time they actually get it to the underwriter, they're going to say, well, wait a second, you had a large deposit. Where did that money come from? I can't source it. Now you don't have all the deposits. The deal will fall through right then and there. And unfortunately, years ago, sellers would forgive things and they would work around you. This day and age, they'll just move on to the next buyer and they'll say, oh, you can't get it done in the 30 days that we want it, on to the next buyer. So it's unfortunate. The buyers right now are really on the hook for a lot of pressure. They got to get it done, and they got to get it done quickly, and they got to pay over asking in a lot of cases.
So is there anything that you can do in a situation like that to adjust the submittal, and if so, like, have you done that in the past?
Oh yes, and it's that's what you want to look for. The lenders, they can't not unsee something. So the minute you show the lender something, they can't say, "Oh, I made off, I didn't see it." No, they saw it. It's in the file. But when you have the number one case is a lot of times large deposits. So if you had a large deposit come in last month or today, I would tell that borrower, okay, well, you got another bank statement coming out in 2 more weeks, because on May 1st you're going to have a bank statement. Why don't you wait for that to come in? And let's not show them this bank statement. There's always things that can be done and plan ahead, so you won't run into those roadblocks or traps.
So my final question to you today is goal setting with refinancing. Can you just explain to the audience what that means?
Yes. Yeah. You want to have the numbers in front of you and say, is this a good time to refinance? And make that your goal to save yourself some money. Give yourself a raise. If you can save $100 a month on your mortgage payment, you basically gave yourself a raise, because now you have $100 more cash flow coming in every month without having to ask your employer, can you give me another $100 more this month? So you want to set that and get your credit scores in line, see where they're at, see what we can do to fix your credit scores, because with a refinance, you have the time and you can really get yourself in the right position, and then you can refinance and save over the life of the loan, because even if it was $50 a month, you're saving hundreds of thousands of dollars over the life of that 30-year mortgage.
That's true. Well, I'd like to thank you for your time, Peter. Everyone, if you're interested in a first-time homebuyers class, please go on Peter's website, Easy Apps Mortgage, if you can give your website.
Yep, easyappsmortgage.com, and I'll set up a special time and date for your viewers too, and we'll get in depth on what you need to know before you even get to that financing stage, and get you approved first, then worry about the glamorous stuff about the real estate.
Okay. And thank you, everyone. And you could, as always, you can send questions to me at my email at mybfservices@gmail.com. My name's Aminata Botas, and I'd like to thank you for joining us this week. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Anna.